about our industry, when we have to ask the question, when will ethics become mainstream, it's a pretty tragic thing. The trouble is with ethics is at the CMO level, it makes sense. When the CMO is talking to the markets about how the company takes privacy really seriously, how it takes its responsibilities as a manufacturer or as an advertiser really seriously.
Jamie Barnard is the Batman of data integrity. No cape, just a mission to clean up digital advertising's mess. He's exposing data fraud, lazy compliance, and the dirty secrets behind data leakage, all while rewriting the playbook on ethics. This isn't just an interview, it's vigilante justice for ad tech. Don't miss it.
Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, isn't just the guy you call when your phone rings too much. He's the guy you must call. Need to navigate the legal minefield of robocalls, texts, and telemarketing nightmares? Troutman doesn't just give you advice. He hands you a roadmap, a compass, and a do not press this button sign. Practical? Yes. Actionable? Absolutely. And if you're not calling him first, let's be honest, you're probably making a mistake.
Welcome back to the ADOTAT Show. It's me, Paceloff. Glad to look. My morning has already been a coffee-fueled roller coaster. I've dodged 3 crisis emails, 2 fire alarms, and 1 truly horrifying bagel. But I'm fired up because today we got Jamie Barnard join us. This guy's on a crusade to make media ethics cool again. Yeah, you heard that right. He's like the Batman of data integrity, and he's here to throw down on privacy, fraud, and everything the ad industry loves to avoid talking about. So, Jamie, you're on a mission for responsible media, like a digital Don Quixote tilting at windmills, except these windmills are privacy standards and half-baked metrics. So where did this passion start? Was there a light bulb moment, or did it come after one too many eye rolls at flimsy data practices?
I guess, I should say hi, first of all. It's great to be here. Nice to see you, Pesha. Yeah, it's in my nature, I think, honestly. I think that's probably why I went into the law. I've always wanted to kind of remove barriers to things that I love, and that's always been the case in advertising. I think probably the moment came in about 2010 with a brand, a Unilever brand called Pot Noodle, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's noodles in a pot. And they kept asking me whether they could advertise on Facebook. And in those days, like, Facebook banned any kind of promotion, any kind of brands. There was no one there. That was kind of what made the platform what it was. But they kept pushing. And eventually I looked at their rules of engagement, which clearly banned any kind of advertising. But I was like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, they're going to tell us off. So we went ahead and did it. And then about 3 weeks later, I got a call from Facebook. I thought they were going to send me a cease and desist letter or something like that. But actually they said, how did it go? Right. What was the advertising like? And then within 2 months, we had rules of engagement and a deal for running promotions on Facebook. So,
what date was that?
About 2010.
Wow. Very early.
Really, really early.
So was this the day that responsible media wasn't just a boardroom phrase to you?
No, I don't think I was even thinking about responsible media until probably lockdown. I suppose in Unilever's terms, I've spent a lot of time in public policy, really working on the big industry challenges like viewability metrics, brand safety, online harm. So it's always been a big part of what I do. But it was kind of 2021 when I was so fed up with trying to make sense of the complexity of privacy regulations that I kind of hit upon ethics as a much easier way to solve the same problem. And I locked myself in a shed for 3 weeks and wrote a paper called The Rise of Morality in Technology. And I think that's really where it all began for me.
So you sometimes refer to data integrity as a media currency, implying it's valuable as financial assets. So I want you to tell me a little bit about data integrity in regards to that, as it's like the holy grail of media. I'm sorry, are we talking Fort Knox security here, or more like the loyalty card at your local coffee shop? How real is this currency?
I mean, I work in media and advertising, and I pretty much always have done. And, when you work in digital media particularly, it's impossible not to get past data.
Right.
It's just such a fundamental, intrinsic part of digital marketing. It is data, and it's really become that kind of commodity. But of course, there is so much low value, high risk data out there, and it's the integrity of the data. It's separating the good from the bad that gives it the value, and I think that's really become more and more important. I think the biggest barrier to programmatic right now is media quality. I think data quality has got to be second, if not equal first.
You're gonna see me shine, 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 shine. Walking on beams of light, 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 light. You're gonna see me shine, 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 shine. I can't help myself, no, no. Blue skies, no dark clouds, nothing in my...
So if data integrity were a currency, what would be its black market equivalent? Is it Bitcoin or Chuck E. Cheese tokens?
I don't know. I sometimes equate it to like the US subprime mortgage crisis, where there was so much bad.
In 2009, right?
In 2007, probably. 2007, 2008. There was so many junk loans being sold as AAA, the safest kind of bonds. In reality, they were full of junk. I think that's true of most of the internet and most of the data that's traded in programmatic.
When you say high quality publishers lower carbon footprints, are we talking Prius level green? Or are we just squeezing a few extra miles out of gas guzzlers? What's the real impact?
I mean, for me, it's a kind of happy consequence of buying media from better quality publishers. The ANA reckons that the average campaign runs across 44,000 sites. I think that the scope to rationalize that is enormous. So we can cut anywhere from 20 to 80% of publishers in a media buy without any impact on your brand KPIs. When you do that, you've just cut the worst performing, hottest running publishers from your media buy. So the kind of carbon impact saving is huge right off the bat.
So what's a high integrity publisher?
When you look at publishers from a data compliance and data integrity perspective, ones that score highly tend to have a lot more transparency over how data is collected and used. They have much more effective consent solutions, so the data provenance is higher. They rely on fewer third-party tools, and they have much better accountability and control of the ones they use. They're less dependent on third-party data sources, and invariably there's a lot less fraud and IVT because of the tools they use.
So what grinds your gears the most? Skimpy consent tech, vendor bloat, data leakage, or fraud?
The most. I think the biggest problem is data leakage. If you look at the dangerous disregard so many publishers have for the number of vendors that are tracking, surveying people, collecting data, and sharing it. It's like a Schrodinger's firework. You don't see it, and every spark that flies off it is your data going off to some other third party. It's pretty bad. So I would say data leakage is a major issue.
So is this the end of the long tail?
There are millions of publishers that rely on advertising to kind of fund them. I think the long tail will keep growing. I think it's just incumbent on us to use the tools that are available today to keep it super tight. There's really no need to buy media on 1,000 publishers. So I often talk about the paradox of the inclusion list. People use inclusion lists obviously to optimize their kind of vendor list, but the truth is that you can cut it too far. Most advertisers buy media on way too many publishers, but we shouldn't restrict it to the point where you lose a lot of the value in diverse owned media and, highly engaged, relevant segments of audiences, even though they may be quite small.
Right. How would you define data integrity if you had to pitch it to a room of skeptical CMOs in under a minute?
Yeah, data integrity I look at in two different ways. There's the kind of the value of the audiences, the accuracy of the data, the reliability of that data and its provenance. So, really how much trust do you have in that data? The other way of looking at it is around more of the ethics side. Have transparency and respect and fairness? Are you using it appropriately? So I think it's really a combination of those two things.
So what are the biggest threats to data integrity that keep you up at night? Is this something that we can solve or just manage?
There's so many different ways of answering that. And because fundamentally, there's quite a big human problem. But when you think about data integrity, a lot of people inside organizations feel like it's somebody else's problem. There's also massive amounts of complexity. Obviously data has come from multiple sources. It's shared with multiple vendors. And that level of complexity can create kind of a degree of paralysis inside companies. So really the secret is finding ways to make it super, super easy.
Right.
Can I just pause you for a minute? Can you cut this out?
Yeah, sure. So data integrity isn't just theoretical. A study by IAB Europe noted that 75% of advertisers say data quality is their top challenge. Do you think that Europe is taking this more seriously than America?
I mean, undoubtedly. I would say Europe is probably 5 years ahead, but I don't think it will take 5 years for the US to catch up. It's anyone's guess as to what the new administration is going to mean for privacy and privacy enforcement in the US. But certainly, Europe takes a different approach and has quite a different attitude to privacy than the US. But as I say, I think the gap between the two is narrowing quite quick.
How do we know when we're hitting the gold standard of integrity versus just passing?
I'm not sure there is a standard, to be honest. I think that's really what we're trying to bring to the market, certainly in the context of media. I think up till now, everyone has been focused on privacy for the sake of it, meaning trying to understand how these laws are evolving and all the rest of it. But the reality is we have to take this to the ground. If we can create new metrics in the market that make data compliance actually deliver a genuine return, then I think we will start to see mass adoption.
I also noticed that the Ponemon Institute estimates that data breaches cost companies an average of $3.86 million. Obviously, that's probably average, not a median. I'm curious, who's actually in charge of making data integrity happen? Is it the publishers, the platforms, or some third-party vigilante force?
The activists definitely have a role.
Right.
I think the reality, though,
who are the biggest activists right now?
Well, in Europe, it's the likes of Privacy International and NOYB, which is none of your business. But yeah, they are super active, have been since 2018. They are responsible for some of the litigation that's resulted in the biggest fines in history.
And what about in the US?
I don't see the activism quite so strong in the US. Inevitably, Schrems brings a lot of litigation. There are now funds being pulled together to sue ad tech. So people are raising capital to bring class actions against ad tech providers, particularly for privacy breaches.
So I know that you're a card-carrying member of the WFA's Data Ethics Board, and I don't know. I can't write what the WFA. Can you tell me what that is?
It's the World Federation of Advertisers.
Right. I knew that. It's the industry's moral compass. You've been vocal about bridging the gap between what brands can do with data and what they should do. I would say you're basically the high priest of data ethics. Between the WFA, Meta's policy boards, and your own company's standards, what exactly is the core doctrine here? What is one commandment that every brand should follow with no excuses?
Oh, that's a good question. I can answer that. I can't even find it. Just bear with me.
That's okay. All the pauses get edited automatically.
Is that right? Okay, then I shall pause.
It's a nice AI function. And the ums, it gets rid of all the ums.
If there was one rule every brand should follow, I'd say, honestly, it's transparency. It solves so many of the problems that we face in across the kind of digital media supply chain. And so many companies are living on borrowed time. One of the kind of rookie mistakes that we still see happening today is just the placement of social media pixels in front of consent solutions. So data fires off, and often quite sensitive data can fire off to these social platforms, often without the owner of the site knowing, and that gets them into immediate hot water. I mean, this is $10 million territory right off the bat, and it's giving rise to all manner of class action litigation in the US. So transparency is really, it's critical.
So what's the biggest hurdle here in making data ethics mainstream? Is it the endless debates, the compliance costs, are the ROI hawks who can't see past the metrics.
What did it tell you about our industry when we have to ask the question, will ethics become mainstream? It's pretty tragic, I think. The trouble is with ethics is at the CMO level, it makes sense. When the CMO is talking to the markets about how the company takes privacy really seriously, how it takes its responsibilities as a manufacturer or as an advertiser really seriously. But when you get down to the individuals, if you're looking at the kind of operational layer, the kind of the media traders, things like ethics and sustainability become a little bit more detached. Often they're running against weekly or quarterly targets, and those targets are often misaligned. These are often vanity kind of metrics around cost or click-throughs. And, putting ethics in the way of that can be quite frustrating. So I think it's critical to align the business values and, what happens at the grassroots level. But what I would say as well, a lot of young people leave companies because of the way the company treats data. And this is true, especially in the context of AI ethics. A lot of young people, I read a statistic that 20% of young people identified with leaving a job because of the way their company used AI and data. So yeah, cut both ways.
Where's a sweet spot where brands don't implode financially but can still keep their conscience intact?
Say that again.
Sorry, what's the sweet spot between ethics and profitability for a company?
Another very good question. And in my experience, aside from talking a good game, ethics can be the first thing to go out of the window when it gets in the way of profits. I think certainly what we do at Compliant philosophically is to find ways where doing the right thing actually pays, because it's the fastest way to get change in the industry. Even in the context of privacy and data compliance, actually, if you can show that it generates a genuine return, then ethics and profitability don't have to be in conflict. But when leadership is really crystal clear on the values of the company and then enforce that, it becomes less problematic. It becomes easier to stand up. People have the psychological safety to stand up and say, we're going to miss this target because we need to pause and reflect on whether this use of AI or the proposed use of data is legal, ethical, morally acceptable. And that's pretty tough, but it's happening.
Is there anyone in the ad industry you think who actually gets data ethics right? Or are we all just nodding and smiling?
I know a lot of people in different ways. I think there is one company that I would call out, having seen what they do firsthand, and that's Reckitt. These guys have always been really performance driven, but they now really drive responsibility and performance together, and they've done a fantastic job. And this isn't just lip service, this is in the whole organizational structure and the way media performance isn't segregated from doing the right thing with data. And that, I know that's taken them a hell of a lot of work, but I would say they're one of the best in class I've seen.
Who handles the data integrity over there? Is it from the top down?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't really want to get into the specifics of how one company structures their organization because it feels a bit uncomfortable.
Okay.
But just out of professional courtesy to them.
You've also been beating the drum for a privacy narrative reset, arguing that privacy conversation needs to be about data integrity, not just compliance. So I want you to flip the narrative on privacy. It's all about regulation, fines, and compliance boxes, but you want to focus on just data integrity. Tell me, why are we talking about privacy the wrong way?
Yeah, that might need a little unpacking. There are people in companies who absolutely need to be thinking about privacy.
Right.
What I think has changed is, from a commercial point of view, a lot of the responsibility has shifted away from lawyers and data governance specialists, BPOs, into the business. So when you're looking at privacy in a function like marketing or media or e-commerce, then it pays to take a step back. I don't think marketeers should be trying to keep pace with the specifics of different regulations in different states or different markets, because it's a continuously moving feast. It's pretty overwhelming, and frankly, they've got plenty on their plate. If you take a step back and you look at data from a kind of as a commodity, right? It's one of the most valuable digital assets a company has. Understanding the value of that commodity, the rights that come with it, what you can do with it, and understanding how to hold your extended supply and network to the same standards. That's the value. So when I talk about privacy and data integrity in that sense, I'm encouraging people who are not privacy specialists or lawyers or data governance people to take ownership of it, but not feel it's a legal issue, not feel that they need to understand the specifics of these regulations, which are phenomenally complicated, but actually to take ownership of data and the responsible use of data.
Yeah, I want to bring that up. GDPR and other regulations make privacy compliance a massive burden, especially for small companies. How do we make it less burdensome and more impactful for these small companies?
Again, this is where we come back to the kind of layers within the organization, because unfortunately, at a company level,
right,
there's really no getting around.
What about small publishers? It's very hard for small publishers, and I just came from a publishers conference. It's very small for small publishers to understand all this and to even do it. And instead, what they're doing is they're doing 1,000 compliance pops. Like, when are we going to get rid of those?
Yeah, the pop-ups are the cause of these pop-ups is the law. So the law sets down really specific disclosure obligations and really complicated consent requirements. And the only way companies can show with a degree of certainty that a person has been informed about the data use, right, and has understood it and agreed to it is a pop-up or some kind of privacy notice. So it's quite perverse, really, that the law that's set out to empower people and give transparency, choice, and control to the consumer has created a world where it is impossible to exercise any meaningful choice at all because of the scale, complexity, volume of these pop-ups and notices.
Are there any numbers how many people actually read these pop-ups before checking it?
I mean, it's fractional. It's probably around 5%.
If you could streamline privacy compliance for all brands across all states, what would that look like? Are we talking about like a national-wide GDPR for the United States?
Yeah, my understanding is that the federal law is less likely to happen now that Trump is in the second term, but that remains to be seen. I think the GDPR is pretty close to the blueprint for the kind of harmonized regulations, and a lot of laws around the world have been based on the GDPR. We will never reach a point where there is harmony worldwide. I think it's a little bit like Miss Universe saying she wants world peace. I think we can get quite a long way. Most of the world is not at war, but there will always be points of difference just simply because of the macroeconomics and social tensions in different parts of the world.
In 5 years, do you see privacy compliance still being an uphill battle? Or are we entering a new era where integrity will be expected?
In 5 years, privacy will still be a headache. It will still be a headache for people who have not gone far enough to get in front of this. See companies that are fixated with just building a defensive shield against litigation, but they always stop way short of the kind of transformation that's necessary to be matched fit in a data-driven, highly regulated market. It really pays to get in front of this. It's not going away. We're facing the perfect storm where there's a growing appetite for data, growing expectations of privacy amongst consumers, a network of intermediaries especially in the media supply chain that is just insane. Regulatory complexity is growing, year on year, and enforcement is getting stricter. We're seeing these eye-watering fines popping up in pretty much in every market now.
Right. I'm very interested in this publisher compliance index. It's a metric that you claim can make ad buys more ethical by prioritizing publishers with high data standards. Can you tell me a little bit about this?
Yeah, so we look at the data compliance and data integrity of the open web. We've measured over 90% now. So pretty much any publisher in any media buy in any market, we will have compliance risk data for. And what this means is when media traders are buying media for campaigns programmatically, they can take that signal and drive their impressions into fewer, higher quality publishers with better data standards for all the reasons I mentioned earlier.
So I noticed that in 2023 that 90% of US publishers are dropping the ball on compliance. Is that number going to change?
I mean, that is a pretty alarming statistic, and a lot of that comes down to sharing data without appropriate rights. If you look at the way a lot of publishers are set up in the US, a lot of data is shared with, in many cases, scores of third parties before consent's been given. Even on sites where consent is asked for, the data tends to flow before it's been requested.
Yeah,
When
I
you
was
look
just at the legal conference I was just at. Eric Troutman put up a consent form for LendingTree. And when he did it, he just kept on scrolling down. And I could hear all the attorneys in the audience go, my goodness. And it was just hundreds and hundreds of people that they were going to share with. And it came out to almost 1,500 partners.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
So is anyone actually using PCI? And what kind of results are we seeing? Can you give us the real talk? Are brands lining up? Or is this just an educational process right now?
No, it's moved way beyond being just an educational process. We work with a lot of global multinational brands, media agencies, and actually publishers as well. It's important for us to raise standards with publishers because ultimately, all of this is to improve the whole ecosystem. So, does it drive results? Absolutely. When you look at where media spend is going, there is so much scope to avoid wasted spend, to reinvest that long tail into publishers that will deliver much better quality audiences. If you're serving impressions with publishers with high data integrity standards, they bring audiences to you that are going to drive your brand lift, your conversion, your attention metrics. Whereas if you look at the other end of the spectrum, where there are millions of sites that are made for advertising, made for fraud, or just low value, high risk inventory, the kind of quality of the data in that whole ad targeting process is quite questionable.
So do you actually have proof that it raises KPIs or hits KPIs?
Yeah, so we measure real campaigns continuously with our clients. We'll often set compliance baselines and then raise them during the campaigns. And we're always tracking impact on cost, completion, viewability, and so on. And we've seen 2-3 times the compliance across 80% fewer publishers driving the same cost, so no impact on cost. All the brand KPIs are delivered, and increasingly now we're looking beyond those metrics into attention and conversion.
So how does this not complicate the process more?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really everything we're doing is to make it super simple. The last thing we want to do is add extra layers to an already complicated ecosystem. And the truth is, it's a plug and play. We've audited these publishers already, and advertisers and agencies simply take the signal to refine and improve their inclusion lists, to curate their PMPs with publishers that have been kind of pre-filtered against compliance standards, or directly into the DSP. So this is a kind of a straightforward plug and play.
So again, in 5 years, are we going to see PCI as another data metric, or is it something that you think will actually fundamentally change in how we buy media?
Yeah. And I mean, I would hope it's less than 5 years that it will become a signal in every media buy. In fact, there's a lot to be said for running data integrity standards first, because you end up significantly optimizing the number of publishers in the media buy. And in a data-driven market, the integrity of that data is the ultimate currency, coming back to where we started. So you run it first, you end up getting rid of a lot of publishers that would cause carbon impact unnecessarily. And then you run your viewability, your brand safety metrics over a tighter list of higher quality publishers. So yeah, it makes sense to bring this in as a signal in every buy.
And now that we've taken your take on compliance and effectiveness, let's go a bit lighter. Imagine you're on a desert island and you get 5 people to bring along with you. Who makes the cut?
Yeah, I've thought about this before. I'd bring Gordon Ramsay. He's a very famous chef for obvious reasons. Bear Grylls, survivalist. Again, pretty safe bet there. I suppose the wild card might be someone like Lady Gaga, who is a phenomenal musician, actress. She's pretty spicy. Probably the perfect mix, really. Who else have I got? I'd bring a comedian. The British comedian Sean Locke is probably the funniest person I've met. He's dead now, so I'm hoping we can reincarnate him for the experience.
Right.
And having travelled twice around the world with my wife, I would definitely bring her because I know I would stay sane.
Are we talking life or death survival skills? And who would be your MVP? Ramsay cooking or Grill's ability to eat bug?
You mean most valuable person?
Yeah.
Then I would definitely keep Bear Grylls. I mean, I'm a pretty good cook. I'm sure the others can cook as well. So we'd kick Ramsay out and keep Bear Grylls.
So why Lady Gaga? Is she about the music and morale, or do you think she'd surprise you with some survival skills?
Who knows? I think she can do anything, it seems. With only 5 people, you've got to cover all the bases. So I think she does a pretty good job as an entertainer, if nothing else.
Okay, so Sean Locke is obviously for comic relief. Does he keep everyone sane, or do you think he'd be a secret troublemaker?
Honestly, you only have to watch Sean Locke on YouTube to realise that man could do nothing wrong. He'd be just a total joy.
And so you also chose your wife, which I always question why people do it. What's her role in the group? Is she the strategist, the peacemaker, or a person who tells you you're being ridiculous?
Yeah, probably the last. But the truth is, she was the first person I picked in all sincerity and not wanting to be sycophantic, because I have travelled extensively with her and I know we would survive. So, if I had to pick only one, she's the one I would take, genuinely.
So every team obviously has friction points. Who do you think is going to make or break it? Who's the potential liability? And is it you?
It's not me. It's definitely Gordon Ramsay.
Do you just lose his shit?
My God, yeah, but that's part of the entertainment.
Take some bread, put your head between it, or coconuts.
Yeah, exactly. Cook me alive.
If you could swap one person for another, who would it be?
I would swap Gordon Ramsay for someone like Ellen MacArthur, the transatlantic sailor, because she'd probably be our best chance of getting off the desert island when that time came.
So I want to get back to reality and dive into some personal territory. It's obviously you have a strong stance on ethics and high standards, which unfortunately, as we mentioned, is not the standard in our industry. I want to know where this values come from. Let's peel back these layers. So what are the core principles that guide you? I don't want the corporate tagline.
I'm honestly not that guided by ethics and responsibility. I have a deep passion for advertising. Always have done since I was a teenager. So for me, the efforts I put into ethics and responsible media is really to try and make the best of an industry that I genuinely love.
Right.
I have a mischievous curiosity, and that's really what drives me into these spaces.
What do you love most about the industry?
I've always loved the fact that it keeps me on the front line of everything that's happening, all the technology, all the innovation, all the creativity. My entire career has been somewhere between 6 and 18 months out in front. And yeah, it's just so dynamic and fresh and challenging and interesting, and the people are just awesome.
From a barrister to a media compliance leader, what's one value that you have kept in the entire time?
I mentioned it a short while ago. For me, without doubt, is curiosity. I always recruit curiosity and passion. But yeah, if I had one, it would be that desire to explore.
When it comes to responsibility, what's one thing that you take seriously outside of work? Is there a cause or habit that keeps you grounded?
No, life is short. I don't take anything too seriously. I'm not especially grounded, and I'm definitely not a man of routine. So I'll help you there.
What's a failure then that set you up for a win later? I want the real unfiltered version.
I took a job. It was probably the sexiest job on paper.
Right.
And I became a music lawyer in London for one of the best firms. And it was an amazing job, amazing firm. But I hated it. I hated the work. It was all very contract heavy. I wasn't very good at contracts because I hated drafting them. For me, it was too tedious and banal. I learned more in 6 months of hating a job than in 6 years loving my previous job. The smartest thing I did was to get out quick. So I often look back at that period of time as one of the most important in my entire career.
Wait, so obviously the concept of legacy is evolving in the industry. I want to ask you, what would your legacy be in one word or one sentence? Are you aiming for impact, innovation, or something completely different?
An echo of laughter. That's all I want. I was listening to Mike Tyson before his fight with Jake Paul. And a young girl, I mean, I'm talking like a 13-year-old girl, was interviewing him. And she asked the same question. What legacy do you want to leave? And he said, I don't believe in legacies. I'm just a man. When I die, I'll turn to dust. So he was quite dismissive, and the poor girl didn't quite know what to say to that.
Yeah, I think it's partially because Mike Tyson's legacy is very mixed with, prison accusations. So maybe he doesn't want to have a legacy for a good reason.
I don't have such a colorful legacy, so I don't need to worry.
And let's be honest, it's kind of I don't want to get too much. It's kind of a sad ending to his career. Like it's no longer about the boxing; it was about the spectacle, about the ridiculousness of it.
That says a great deal about our society.
Well, it shows where media is coming. I think that obviously that sports. It's less about the sports; it's more about the spectacle. So when work gets you overwhelming, what do you turn to? Is it family, a favorite book, or some ritual that brings you back to center?
The pub.
The pub?
The pub, yeah. That's my spiritual home.
You're really into pub culture?
Yeah. I live in a little
team?
village.
What team?
Village. No, I don't support a team. Never have done.
What village you live in?
A little village called Taplow, west of London, on the River Thames in the countryside. Quite beautiful.
Yeah, my sister used to live in a little village outside of London, we would go there when she lived there. Now she's obviously in Sweden, and I met a ex-RAF pilot, and he taught me about mixing ginger beer and ginger ale. I was obviously 14 at the time. I couldn't have alcohol, so he said that's what they used to drink before they went on missions. Obviously you can't fly, but yeah, those little pubs in those little villages are awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. It's one of the best things about Britain.
It's not something that exists in American culture. So what is your favorite drink? Is it like Stella Artois, Corona, Guinness?
Yeah, Guinness kept me alive at university. For sure.
That's a wrap on this episode of the ADOTAT Show. Big shout out to our sponsors, Troutman Ammon LLP, Rebrand.com, and Incremental.com for backing us for the next 12 months. Seriously, without them, we'd be as lost as a marketer without a tracking pixel. And speaking of Incremental, they're the grown-up in the room when it comes to media measurement. In a world where prices flip faster than politicians change opinions and promotions vanish quicker than a Snapchat message, Incremental is keeping it real. Because if your measurement tool is also selling you the media, you're basically trusting a used car salesman as your financial advisor. We'll be back next week with more industry insights, irreverent humor, and a whole lot of truth bombs. Until then, stay bold, stay curious, and know more than you did yesterday.
Taking all my money, but I make it rain like 24/7. If it mean a little time with you, break my heart and leave me hurt. The next one just gonna do me worse.